mistake number one is cutting it too short too quickly, right? So if I need to now rip this to make it, to change the width, it's now too small to safely really do on the table saw. So we want to take our length at the end so that we can have all our operations perform safely before that. So that's the first mistake. All right, that mistake is too fast on the saw. So this happens on the miter saw bunch where kids want to slam that through the wood. They don't take their time and do a nice cut that is at a good speed. So something that compared to this. All right, that mistake is too slow, being too slow with your feed rate. And so this is a soft wood. It should be able to go much faster than that. Finding that balance of not forcing it through the blade, but having something that moves at a quicker pace, something like this. So that's a much better speed. This leads to another mistake is we always use a push stick and a push shoe. And as students are pushing and they get close to the blade, they want to continue pushing because they feel secure and they push into the blade. So taking this hand away and pushing through as you get there. So something like this. So you're pushing your material. As it gets close to the blade, you move it back, and then eventually you move it away and push it through, not continuing to the blade. Okay, this mistake I see a lot. Let's say that we are trying to take just a small amount, like a quarter of an inch off of a board. We're trying to clean up a side. And so what students will often do is they will take that quarter inch and they will set their fence right over here at a quarter inch or a half inch. And you can see that there's really no space in here to get a push shoe. It's very easy for that to pinch and bind and come back. And so if we're taking off a small amount, we're going to take that off the outside edge. And so that's an easy way for us to, that's a much safer cut. And again, so when we're taking off a small amount, the inclination is to set the fence because you can see that measurement as opposed to going the other way and taking it off on the outside edge. Okay, this mistake doesn't happen very often because we really talk about it in class, but it is trying to cross-cut something without a fence. So in general, you will see students, if they are new to the shop, they will try to push this through like this, and that is a easy way to get kickback. It could even be something that is smaller, right? So something that's a small piece, this is basically not longer than the blade, so it's easy for that to twist in there and get kickback. So the mistake of not using a miter gauge or a crosscut sled, and then also having a piece that is too short, we have a 12-inch, 1 foot minimum that you can rip on the table saw. All right, this mistake that I see is for the drill. And so what'll happen sometimes is students are drilling and they won't understand what these numbers are, even though we've talked about them. And so they'll be trying to drill something in and it's making that noise where basically that clutch is engaging. So understanding, again, how the drill is set up, knowing that if you want to drill, you need to set it on the drill mode and then what the clutch is there for. So again, all right, going back to the drill, what you will sometimes see with students is the wrong amount of pressure. So as they are drilling into material, what they'll find is they either are trying to push the bit through, so they have something that they're trying to just physically push down very hard. That'll often lead to breaking a bit, obviously not one this big. And then on the other side is not enough drill pressure, so they just kind of let it run like this, and they won't push down into the material, right? And so getting that correct drill pressure where you're applying some pressure down so it can feed in, but not too much where you're trying to push it through the wood. This one is a minor one, but I see it a bunch when we start gluing up panels, is instead of setting up a panel where for the pipe clamps where the threads are here so you can tighten it, I'll see students that do this. They set it up the other way. And so they're trying to reach across and tighten this thing up. And so it can just be that simple redirect. Like, what are you trying to do with your layout? Setting it up like this And then, so it's easy to adjust. And then also you can see with this one, they've selected two different lengths to glue this up. We have plenty that are the same length. The problem with this now is it's harder to store. We have a lot of extra clamp that we don't use. So again, selecting the right clamp for the job, the setup, the glue up is important for them to kind of think through before they start. All right, the next mistake I see a lot is the amount of glue necessary for a glue up. So this was a glue up from yesterday for a student. So if we take a look at what they've done, this was a student that probably put on too much glue, and you'll see there's quite the skip. The clamping call is glued onto the board, and you have an amount of glue that's kind of come through and dripped through. So this is too much glue. On the flip side, there are often students that put in too little glue. So finding that right surface area, you can really help them out by giving them a glue brush, a silicone brush, and helping them make sure the surface is coated, but not too much, and then just getting a little bit of squeeze out, not getting a ton of squeeze out from there. So again, the right amount of glue is something that takes practice, but students will often overestimate or underestimate. All right, the next mistake I see is in measuring. And so what will happen is students will measure with the tools that they're comfortable with, and that'll often be a ruler. And so a ruler has all sorts of problems in the wood shop, a lot of times because it's not incredibly accurate. So we actually have some space here that we have physical space, but the measurement starts there. And they'll start to kind of lay out their measurements with the ruler. So you can get them to transition either to better rulers, like a steel ruler. That one works a little bit better. But even ideally, you would get them to use something like a tape measure, right, to be able to put out their measurements, and that will be a better accuracy. And so the other thing that you'll see them do is they will do this, what I call batch measurement. So if they need to break this into 1 foot sections, they'll mark a foot, they'll mark, and then it's a 6-inch section, and then it's another 6-inch section, and then maybe it's a 4-inch section, and they'll come back and they'll have marked it, often with a very thick marker, and then they'll come back with this, and they'll want to go and cut that board with all their measurements on it. And the problem with that is they haven't accounted for the kerf, they haven't accounted for something being off, and they'll try to match up their measurements that aren't matching after their first couple of cuts. So getting them to use stop blocks, getting them to use measuring one at a time to adjust for the kerf is a critical part so that they'll have accurate parts when they're done cutting them. So this mistake is selecting the correct saw. So I have band saws, I have table saws, I have miter saws, and a lot of times I'll hear students ask, like, how do I cut this? And what they'll often do is they will select the saw that they are most comfortable with. And that's often the one that they've learned first. So they will try to cut everything on the band saw if that's what they're used to. Or they'll try to cut everything on the table saw, or they'll try to cut everything on the miter saw. And so you need to be careful about making sure that they're comfortable with all the tools, but really selecting between the appropriate tool for the cut is critical. Otherwise, they will just go with what they know and they'll make it work.